In the world of indie horror, it's hard not to find a game that's at least a little bit influenced by the groundbreaking Silent Hill series. And that's even when you discount the myriad of PT clones that are out there. And Silent Hill being such an iconic game? It's pretty damn easy to emulate. Have a regular Joe or Joette as the main character, make it take place in an abandoned town or area, add copious amounts of fog, and then finally habitate these areas with body horror monstrosities that represents the dev's suppressed sexual feelings, and you're golden basically. So, like I just said, it's pretty damn easy to emulate the style of a Silent Hill game. What isn't that easy to emulate though, is the overall experience that a Silent Hill game offers. The haunting oppressiveness of the town, the Beksinski Bacon-esque weirdness that pervades the darker corners of the world, and that Lynchian sensation of things feeling rather off. This is actually the hard part to emulate, and it's where many indie devs and even the professional studios that were hired to take off where Team Silent left fell flat on their faces. They tend to rely on the surface level features, like the fog-enveloped abandoned town and freaky monsters, but don't manage to get a grasp on that uncanny weirdness that makes Silent Hill so damn unique. And this is where we arrive at Post-Trauma, another contender at trying to replicate that elusive Silent Hill magic. And like many of the games I cover here, I discovered Post-Trauma on the good old Twitterverse, where the developer regularly posted short snippets and screenshots of the game. And right from the start I could tell that there was something different about this project. It looked so very Silent Hill-like, but I also immediately recognized that it very much had its own identity, despite the many visual similarities it had. So I didn't hesitate to download the demo right from the moment it got released. And after playing it, I can confirm that my suspicions were correct, as this game is amazing as both a Silent Hill homage, as well as a horror game that very much has its own identity. From a gameplay perspective, it very much feels like a logical progression from the Team Silent developed games. The character controls pretty much like you'd expect a typical Silent Hill character to control, only slightly smoother actually. And it all feels very good, especially with how the camera slowly pans along with the movement of your character at times to create this moody and slightly nauseating sense of motion that's very reminiscent of its influence. Your main pastime in the demo will consist of solving puzzles in order to progress through the game, and these can range from elaborate but rewarding thinking exercises to the more usual fare of insert said object into that one other object for a door to open. And incidentally, these types of puzzles are very indicative of its main influence. First of all, because they're your typical survival horror object puzzle trope, but even more importantly, in how they feel in the grand scheme of things. The puzzles presented here are always logical in their setup. For instance, there's this headless statue standing in the middle of two other statues that have their heads still intact. Now, the logical conclusion would be to find the missing head and bring the two back together. And you'd be right. So, you insert the coin you just found into that vending machine you just encountered, et voila, you get a statue head. Now, that doesn't make any sense at all now, does it? But that's the thing. Here, it does. And it feels right, because everything here is weird and off. And that's how the game wants you to feel, because it amplifies this feeling of being stuck in this strange place. Strange as in, you're unfamiliar with its surroundings, but also strange as in, what in the Sam Hill is going on here? And while that solution and others you'll find in this demo may seem very gamey, They are also just very fitting for a place as weird and uncanny as the one your character finds himself trapped in. Overwhelmed by all the weirdness he finds himself surrounded by, he literally wonders to himself if all of this is a fever dream. So, the puzzles and its solutions, employing a sort of dream logic, makes perfect sense in a world like this. But apart from fitting well in the world of post-trauma, the puzzles are also just rewarding to solve. And then I'm specifically talking about a more elaborate puzzle that you start with to get off the subway carriage that your character is stuck on. This is a monster of a puzzle that requires you to navigate every corner of the carriage, inspecting every bit of interactable scenery for clues on how to figure out the code that you need for the combination lock that's keeping you stuck there. And from the moment you think you found the correct combination of numbers, it turns out there's a twist to it, and you have to search for further clues in order to break the code. I found that first puzzle to be an elaborate mind twister and a fantastic introduction to the game. It took me quite a while to solve it, but never did it bore or frustrate me, as the clues and little aha moments kept trickling in piecemeal until I finally solved it. It felt super rewarding to solve this puzzle, and I can only hope that this introduction is the promise of more to come, and a sign that the developer doesn't underestimate our capabilities. Because I definitely want more of these intricate types of puzzles, as they show the dev as a capable designer of them. They're that good, in fact, that I would honestly be stoked as all hell if in the final product, the puzzles just took priority over the combat encounters even. When it comes to combat encounters, by the way, there's only one present in the demo, which presents quite the admirable and fucked up looking foe that takes quite some hits and cowardly escape routes to take on. Sadly, that combat itself feels rather bare bones as it is now. If you compare it with the combat of the Silent Hill series, you'll have to come to the conclusion that that feels much more punchy and meaty in comparison. Each hit there feels like it truly connects, thanks to a combination of the animation and great sound design. And sadly, that punchiness is for the moment still missing here. They have the feel and atmosphere down pat. Now if only they can flesh out the feel of the combat further, then they might be on the way to have a bona fide indie horror classic and proud spiritual successor to Silent Hill on their hands. One way that the game immediately distances itself from most other Silent Hill-likes out there is that they chose to eschew the lo-fi PSX style that most others in this subgenre employ. And that's quite a brave move, because the PSX style really tends to add a lot to the creepy and grimy atmosphere of a game like this. And it means that they won't get to hide behind that lo-fi look, meaning that the graphics are going to need to be top-notch in order to be able to bring that horror to life successfully. And I'm glad to say they succeeded here. Bar some graphics mishaps here and there, it looks not only absolutely stunning, but drenched in a grimy and gooey atmosphere that makes the environment seem to come alive in its griminess. And while its stunning graphics really help bring this weird, creepy place to life, the developer really achieves most of this with much more subtle touches that are added to the game. And the virtual camera here plays a huge role in this. Just like traditional survival horror games, it employs a camera system that favors cinematic shots over the convenience of a first-person view or the now more traditional third-person view. And while this was done back in the day, mostly out of technical limitations of the consoles of the time, it did result in purposefully uncomfortable perspectives that limited the player's vision and heightened their instincts, giving the developers the tools to properly scare the players playing them. And it's a Silent Hill series that originally improved upon these static cameras by having a fully 3D engine instead of the pre-rendered backgrounds of old. They always panned or zoomed along with the player character to enhance the mood in these games. And Post-Trauma doesn't just emulate these non-static cameras, it perfects them. The camera not only pans along with the character just like it did in its influences, but it'll offset that by zooming out a little or even tilting the camera slowly to the side while the character moves. Not only does this make for some very moody shots, but it also makes for a slightly nauseating look, which must really reflect how the player character is feeling when confronted with all that is happening to him here. Maybe it's even an omen signaling his descent into madness. And combined with a plethora of post-processing effects, it makes for quite a claustrophobic and disorienting experience. The easily most effective of these post-processing effects being the depth of field, which works really well here to create an oppressive and moody atmosphere that leaves you constantly wondering what else there might be with you in the room there. And talking about what else might be in the room with you, let's talk about the monster stalking you. Now, I already mentioned that you had to fight one in the single combat encounter that's present in the demo. But perhaps the coolest thing this demo offers, and from seeing the promotional shots, seemingly the game as a whole, is that a good amount of the monsters that inhabit this world appear to be non-hostile. They just seem to be there, just gazing at you, which really adds to the already quite uncomfortable mood this game has going on. It kind of feels like they're part of this otherworldly realm, and you're just trespassing here. And that otherworldly feeling is further enhanced by the posters you see all over the subway station that all seem to be written in a foreign language, just like the coins you find throughout the environment, which also seem to be of a foreign currency. And all this really succeeds in making you feel like a fish out of water in this strange world, the unsettling effect of which preps you nicely for the coming madness that will surely ensue further down the line. And that strange world you will be exploring with a player character who is a 50-ish-year-old man in search of his daughter. Now surely he won't have anything to do with that now, would he? Sadly, the model for him appears to be rather basic when compared to the detailed environment in which he exists. And it's especially his face that bothers me a little. Not only does it feel rather flat feature-wise, but his face always seems to be stuck in this stoic expression, no matter what manner of weird shit is happening around him. But as funny and weird as that may seem, it, unintentionally I suppose, kinda fits in with the lucid dream feeling the game has. But it still is rather egregious, especially when you compare it with the facial animation of that other Silent Hill-like contender, Stray Souls, whose facial animations in their demo look stunning in comparison. Granted, Stray Souls is being developed by a team, whereas Post-Trauma is being made by a single developer. That, and overall, Post-Trauma just seems to be the more interesting and unique game of the two, despite this little flaw. But I sure do hope this is something the dev decides to work on, as I feel it will add to the game, whereas now it's even a little bit distracting seeing how apathetic he reacts to everything going on around him. What I do like, however, is how his head tracks any object of interest, just like in that one other survival horror game. What's it called? You know the one. Now, if there's one name you heard me repeat countless times during this video, it's that of Silent Hill. And that's no wonder, as the influence here is clear as day. But it is not an easy name to carry on your back, as its legacy is quite a hefty one to say the least. They are big shoes to fill legacy-wise, and that's without even thinking of all the fans you'll want to please, desperate for another fix, while the official publisher has the IP languishing in past glory hell. But for those hungry fans, Post-Trauma might offer a good option, as it has all the ingredients of what makes a Silent Hill game tick. But, most importantly in my opinion, it does this while retaining its own identity. Because while it uses Silent Hill's gameplay as a firm blueprint, it overlays it with its own visual identity and vibe that, while close to what Silent Hill did, is different and unique enough to make it a product of its developer and not just a cheap way to pander to the fans. It understands the surrealism of Silent Hill, knows it is more than a look, that it is a product of not only the many influences the developer harbors, but their own creativity. It is easily the best approximation of Silent Hill that I've seen so far, while also being respectful towards the source material. So respectful even that the result isn't a mere clone of it. Because it's clear that the developer understands Silent Hill and what makes it tick, and applies that knowledge to his own story and vibe. He didn't make the next Silent Hill, he made Post-Trauma. And trust me, that's a game that's gonna fill a hole in many a Silent Hill's fan's heart. So, that's it for me then. But remember, if you like my content, then please subscribe to the channel for future content, and don't forget to give the video a like. And if you want to support the channel in growing further, then please consider donating to my Patreon for early access to my videos, lots of extra content, access to the Discord channel, and having your name appear in the credits right here. But if you don't want to be chained down by a subscription model, then you can always donate just the one time on my Ko-fi, both of which are linked right down there in the description. Well, thank you so much for watching, and see you all next time.